So when you talk about unique gaming franchises that are exclusive to one platform, Nintendo is simply second to none in this category. And over the years, from the starting on the NES to where we're at now with the Nintendo Switch, there is just simply such a rich library of different franchises to go through and play on the Nintendo hardware that there has simply been some forgotten franchises that need to have sequels released. And today we have to talk about 5 different franchises that I absolutely hope we see Nintendo develop sequels for soon, and some of which we do actually have evidence that there are sequels or re-releases in the works, so we got to talk about it. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. We all know Nintendo loves their racing games, and that's very apparent with something like a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as that game is continuing to sell ridiculous numbers on the Nintendo Switch. But one racing series that I grew up with that I would absolutely love to see Nintendo do a sequel for is none other than the F-Zero series, and I do first remember playing this series on the N64 as F-Zero X. Even though there was a Super Nintendo release, I did not play that title. F-Zero X was a fantastic experience and a very fun racing game, both supporting multiplayer and also single player. And now, of course, they did follow up a new version of that game in the version of F-Zero GX that was released on the GameCube, which was probably the pinnacle of the series in my opinion when it comes to intense racing mechanics and very precise turns and tracks and different things. A GameCube version of that game was very fantastic, and you could enjoy it with friends, but it wasn't as much as like the item type style as what you could expect in a more arcade style like Mario Kart experience. It was more about precise turns, getting the boost patterns just right, recharging your own boost on the side where it pops up with the ability to do that. They had some really unique track ideas, and since it's all set in like a futuristic space type of setting, it is a really cool way that they've designed those tracks, and you could actually go, similar to even what we've seen Mario Kart do now, where you can kind of go upside down or go onto different platforms that you would normally fall off on a typical racer. These are obviously, spacecrafts. It's where Captain Falcon originates from. So I think for as big of a star as Captain Falcon is now, especially with the Smash Bros, series highlights that he's gotten over the years, I think that it makes sense for Nintendo to do some form of a sequel, whether it be just a port of F-Zero GX, which I would actually be happy with on the Switch, or an entirely new from the ground up game. Either way, I do think we need to see F-Zero get another moment in the spotlight, as it has been since 2003 that we've actually seen a mainline F-Zero game released, and that was F-Zero GX on the GameCube. Now, they did have some kind of game that came out on the Game Boy Advance, and I don't recall the name of that, but I do think that we're obviously long overdue for F-Zero to get its moment in the spotlight, and I hope that Nintendo gives us a sequel soon. Now, the next game series that is way overdue for any kind of sequel is Star Fox, and we did actually see Star Fox get a release roughly about 5 years ago with Star Fox Zero on the Wii U, but since then we have not seen anything else in the form of this franchise, and we definitely need to, as if they just did more of a Star Fox 64 style game and maybe, kind of created more of an ability to land on planets and explore a little bit on foot as well, maybe a merger of what Star Fox 64 and Star Fox Adventure was, with some refined controls and some less janky type controls whenever it comes to being on land, because while Star Fox Adventures was actually an enjoyable title on the GameCube, it really ditched the space mechanics altogether, and the controls were not as good as they could have been. But I think if Nintendo really did the sequel to this right, and they put it all the effort in between the space exploration part and the space shooting part, and also included some great ground combat and exploration, there's no reason why people wouldn't love to play another adventure with Fox McCloud as the main protagonist. And you obviously have all the big supporting cast that everybody knows now, especially because of the Smash Bros series, with like your Falco and Wolf and all of the different amazing characters that belong to this universe. And I do think that Nintendo has obviously kind of forgotten about Star Fox in the Switch era, era so far. So maybe by some, miracle, we see the next mainline Nintendo Direct get some form of a Star Fox announcement, as I do think it has enough fans to support some great sales numbers for a potential sequel if Nintendo takes the time to do so. The next series we're talking about is truly one of my favorite franchises of all time from Nintendo, probably second only to Zelda, and I would even put this ahead of Mario as far as ones that I enjoy or have enjoyed over the years, and that is Metroid. Now guys, we absolutely need another mainline Metroid game to come out on the Nintendo Switch. We simply have zero Samus support on the Nintendo Switch, if you can believe that, and that is just unacceptable to me. Now granted, we do know that this franchise has some titles in the works. We definitely know that Metroid Prime 4 is absolutely in development right now and will be released at some point in the future, hopefully the end of 2022 from the sounds of it, but that is not confirmed, so we don't really know when to expect that release, but we obviously know it's at least getting a sequel. We do also have heavy rumors to suggest that Nintendo has already completed Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Switch, which would probably already be out if they did not have to completely scrap development of Metroid Prime 4 originally like they did and restart from the ground up with a new studio. So that was a whole controversy in itself, but we probably have Prime Trilogy coming to the Switch as well. But the last release that we actually saw for Samus and the Metroid series was Samus Returns on the 3DS, which is an absolutely fantastic 2D Metroid experience. It was released in 2017 and it still holds up really well. I mean, even if you play it on the 3DS right now, it looks fantastic and it plays fantastic, and that's one that I actually hope we see ported to the Switch at some point with some touched up visuals, or even just doing an entirely new 2D Metroid experience would be something that I would be happy to play through as well. Metroid is one of the few franchises that transition from 2D to 3D very well, and the Prime Trilogy games were absolutely outstanding. Metroid Prime 1 still honestly being my favorite of all of them. I cannot tell you guys how many hours I put into that game on the GameCube and trying to 100% it, which I did eventually do, and that is just a great experience from start to finish. And the sequel Prime games are also absolutely worth playing and great installments in the franchise. And I just hope that we see Nintendo actually give some love to Metroid, and whether it start with the 2D games or Prime Trilogy, bring this over to the Switch sooner rather than later for the hardcore Metroid fans, because while we talk a lot about Zelda's 35th anniversary, Metroid is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year as well. And while I don't think Nintendo will necessarily acknowledge all of these anniversaries, as there's a ton of them this year, I do think that it would make a lot of sense for them to at least release a 2D or the 3D Prime combo pack on the Nintendo Switch in 2021 at some point. So let's hope we get more Metroid news soon. Next up on the list is a very nostalgic one for me, and that is simply because we only had one entry in this series, and that was on the Nintendo 64, and that's none other than Diddy Kong Racing. And guys, this is one of those games that unless if you played through it and understand it, on paper it doesn't sound like the most enticing title, but whenever you experience it, it was an incredible game at the time, and I think Nintendo could obviously go way further with this title now on the new hardware like a Nintendo Switch. And I think they do need to make another installment in this franchise, as even though it's in the Donkey Kong universe, it's obviously Diddy Kong getting his own spin-off with him being the primary protagonist, and I do think that it needs some more attention in the current generation. Now guys, this game is very unique in the style that it is kind of a racing game, but not really, because it's more focused on exploration and completing certain tasks, and there's even boss fights in it. So it's really kind of a unique experience that I don't feel like has been really recreated in any other type of game. And while Rare was obviously the studio that was behind this title, and they wouldn't be going forward because they are now owned by Microsoft, there's still a number of other great studios that could take on a project like this and breathe some new life into it on the Nintendo Switch in HD. And I think we need to give Diddy Kong in his racing gear another shot at being a mainline protagonist in this Nintendo series that has really been entirely dropped and forgotten about. And while Rare had a bunch to do with the unique, creation of this game, since we haven't seen anything even similar to this over the years, I think it makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to give us a Diddy Kong Racing 2, or at least something that is kind of a throwback to this game, and maybe they branch out and take it to new levels altogether. But I think if they use some of the inspiration that's there in this unique style of an experience, experience, it would make a lot of sense for us Nintendo fans, especially if you haven't gotten the chance to play it, as this is a timeless classic that I would still happily play through from start to finish on the N64 as of today. And the last series on this list that we're talking about today is Donkey Kong Country. And guys, this is one for me that I grew up with on the SNES, and Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 were some of my favorite platforming games of all times. Now, we saw a large gap in the history of Donkey Kong as they did some spin-off like Jungle Beat games on the GameCube. They gave him a 3D open world exploration type of game on the Nintendo 64 in Donkey Kong 64, but they got wildly inconsistent on the GameCube, as all he really had was like music rhythm games that got sold with the bongo drum beat type thing. So it was an interesting experience, but it's not something that is really a staple of the franchise. And we have obviously seen Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U and ported to the Switch. I want to remind you guys that that game from the Wii U was actually originally developed in 2014 and released in 2014, so we're really way overdue for another installment in the Donkey Kong Country franchise. And while ports are nice, I think that the gameplay and the difficulty that came along with Tropical Freeze was really incredible, and it was probably one of the first times that I felt like I was really playing a true Donkey Kong Country game again, like equivalent to the SNES, and I was definitely that big of a fan of Tropical Freeze. I think they need to go further with the series and give it another sequel, and they can do it in the same engine. It looked beautiful, it plays beautifully. I think they need to give us 2D gamers that came up with 2D platformers that were truly difficult. I think they need to give us more titles like that, and Donkey Kong Country fits the build perfectly. So let's hope at the next Nintendo Direct or whatever the next game showcase is that we see some love for Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong in a mainline title together. I would even love it if they did something like Donkey Kong Country 2, where Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong are the two main characters and you're trying to rescue Donkey Kong. So they could go a lot of different directions with this, but I would absolutely happily pay $60 for whatever is next in the Donkey Kong Country franchise. But I would love to know your guys' opinions on which series you think over the years Nintendo has more or less forgotten about, or have just simply waited too long to release sequels for, and how you would stack rank your own list of games if you could just pick 5 of different series that you think we need to see sequels for on the Nintendo Switch going forward. So please leave that in the comments down below, and I'll also be creating a community poll to kind of share in more detail with you guys, or give you kind of like what's your number 1 game series that you hope we see Nintendo focused on next. So make sure you vote in the poll before you leave today as well. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below. Hit the like button on your way out on this video if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.